Maverick News presents The Rick Walker Show. Defrag your mind.
Ladies and gentlemen, O Canada, with members of the Central Band of the Canadian Armed Forces and the Ottawa Children's Choir. Mesdames et Messieurs, O Canada, avec des membres de la musique centrale des Forces armées canadiennes et du Chœur des enfants d'Ottawa.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
Ils ne vieilliront pas comme nous.
They will not shall grow not old, as that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. As the going down of the sun, and in the morning we will remember them.
Gawed, Doniki ka siwag, Ejikin win in Gangoyan. Doniki ka min, Gawin, Getsi win, Dayaksika sinawa. Gawin ge, in Daso Babon, Dabanana Jik sinawa. Pigo, Navageshbok, Minwa, Gukejeba Kok. Gamakwen Manani. Gamakwen Manani.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Mesdames et messieurs, veuillez vous asseoir.
And that was the scene today in Ottawa on this Remembrance Day, November 11th, 2023. This year feels a lot different. A lot different. We'll show you scenes from different parts of the world tonight. And you'll see why it's different. It's different because it looks like more of the same, but from a long time ago. Well, maybe not that long ago. I hear echoes of wars past and see the shadows coming to life again. And in a few minutes, we will be joined by Adrew MacGillivray from Veterans for Freedom. We'll talk about what's happening today, and we'll talk about his organization. We'll talk about freedom. We'll get his perspective on where things are at with Canada. And maybe he'll help us understand why this year Remembrance Day feels a whole lot different. I'll be right back. More to come on the other side.
Maverick News. The world is watching. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Back and well, I'll tell you, things sure do feel, like I said, feel a lot different this year on this Remembrance Day. What you were looking at previously was the ceremony at the War Memorial in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Today, but man, with the war in Ukraine, the war between Israel and Hamas, it feels like the whole world is completely destabilized. And I can tell you tonight, all you have to do is just take a look at social media and you'll see that disruption. Well, here, look, let's just scroll down. Let's take a quick stroll down Twitter or X lane. And we'll take you from Toronto to London, England in the blink of an eye and look at what's going on, what has been going on today. Here's a clip from Rebel News reporter Alexandra Lavoie. Somebody said in this clip, Hitler knew how to deal with these people. This is a pro-Hamas supporter on the streets of London, England. And here we go.
They will know what kind of people. If the West feels so sorry for the Israeli Zionists, why don't they give a place in Germany? Why don't they go to Hitler's back garden and make an occupation there? Then they will know what kind of people these are. Why every so many 100 years, the Zionists get slaughtered? Because Hitler knew how to deal with these people. They probably made a program so they can create a state of Israel in the expense of Palestinian Muslims' blood.
Scroll down. Here's London, England. Scroll down a little more. More London, England. And there's this. This is nothing. Wait. Just wait. Hang on. And there was this.
This is fucking our country! This is our country! Hey! They're going! Fucking workers!
Yep. Okay, so just to bring it back home before we get to our guest today. This happened, I believe this was in Toronto, and it was captured by some mainstream media, and this particular version of the clip is from Karim Assad. And people were shocked. But should they be? Should this really surprise anyone? She shouted, "Free Palestine," I think. This woman. And people got very upset in the middle of the Remembrance Day ceremony.
It's not your land, motherfucker. Go home, you son of a bitch. My grandfather turned to put this 17 years ago. What, you motherfucker? Hey, let's go, bud.
The 9 Canadian peacekeepers who were killed as the aircraft they were in.
Okay. Give me a minute. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back with our guest for the evening on the other side of this. I need to pick up the right cue here. A little slow tonight. Here we go.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
I'm back, and joining us is Andrew MacGillivray. Andrew, how are you this evening, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. It feels like a very strange day to me, though, I have to say. This Remembrance Day. I was just saying, I don't know if you were listening before joining us. This Remembrance Day feels really different than it just doesn't feel the same at all. It feels like it's depressing. But with other Remembrance Days, there was always a sense, for me anyway, of hope, and of importance, that lessons had been learned in the past. But this year, I'm not feeling as hopeful, I guess, is what it is. How about you?
Yeah, it's a little difficult. this year, especially because I think we're on the precipice of the kinetic portion of World War III. You know, we have the civil unrest across the globe, all over Europe. You have coups happening in Africa. You have large-scale protests happening in North America. And there's a lot of, you know, people disagreeing. There's a lot of hate. There's a lot of violence. And, you know, you would hope that with Remembrance Day, that's when you can sort of come together and honor the fallen and put that stuff aside. But it seems that, you know, we have two sort of major conflicts with Russia, Ukraine, with Israel and Palestine. And, you know, it's a scary time in this world. And I think a lot of people are just unsettled about what's happening on the global scale. So I think that's the feeling. At least that's my feeling. I'm, you know, a bit worried about the global situation and what's happening. And you know, that'd be my guess if I was a betting man.
I guess the other thing for me that makes it feel so much different this year is I've noticed in previous years more incidents at Remembrance Day ceremonies where people will come and protest. I was at one last year, and there were a couple of First Nations protesters there. And then today in Toronto, we saw this woman shouting some pro-Palestinian. I think she yelled "Free Palestine." It wasn't captured on that clip. And then if people got upset, and then we're seeing these protests here in Canada, in the United States. We're seeing violence in the streets as a result of this, you know, incredible polarization. It feels like the war is really coming here in an unprecedented way.
Yeah, well, you have to, you know, sort of go back to Yuri Bezmenov and the ideological subversion and what they've done through academia to our young people. They've been, you know, brainwashed to think that, you know, we're all just colonizers, you know, white people bad. The wars, you know, the wars that we fought bad. It's just, you know, I think it was in maybe 2017 or 2018. There was an NDP lady who said, or candidate, or she was an MP or MPP. And she said, you know, I'm not going to wear the poppy because it's a sign of warmongering. Right. And so if you look at the young people who sort of been disconnected from that, and they've been, you know, been told to think that, you know, wars are well, I shouldn't say that wars are a good thing, but they, you know, that they were all sort of a form of, you know, colonization and, you know, that sort of thing. It's not surprising to have these sorts of protests and these people doing this sort of thing. And that sort of goes hand in hand with why young people aren't joining our military in this day and age. So, you know, I always look at, you know, Remembrance Day, or at least when I was younger, was for the World War I, World War II, and, you know, the Vietnam and Korean War veterans. And, you know, our most recent wars, you know, with Afghanistan, you know, I think I'm personally not a combat veteran. I have lots of friends who have been in combat. I've been deployed overseas in support operations to those guys. And I'm aware of sort of the geopolitical happenings that took place with Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria and Libya, which we were involved in as well. And it's those wars, they're not the same as what, you know, World War I, World War II, and, you know, Vietnam and Korea, the Korean War stood for, because a lot of guys realize after the fact that these are wars that we took part in, you know, destroyed these countries, and it was for what, right? We're shoving democracy down the throats of nations that don't want it. It's banker wars, it's globalist wars. So I think a lot of guys, at least myself, try to remember, you know, the people that we lost, the good people were over there thinking they were doing the right thing, and just honor them to the best that you can. But I've spoken to a lot of guys who realize that some of these Middle Eastern wars were definitely a mistake.
Yeah, you did touch on Yuri Bezmenov, and of course, he's someone who came to our attention really back in the 1980s. Used to work for Russian intelligence, defected to the West, and shared some of the secrets of subversion that other countries, in particular the former Soviet Union, have used to, I guess, undermine trust and confidence in our own country and our institutions and our government, and maybe even subvert the government itself. How much damage do you think has been done over the years? You kind of touched on it.
Yeah, I'd say it's unfortunately pretty significant. We just participated in the 1 million march for children, and I think there was probably over 100,000 Canadians marching from Newfoundland right over to Vancouver Island, and that was a big protest, probably the biggest one since the trucker convoy. And you look at the protest down in Mississauga and Toronto, like just one or two of those protests just has as many people there. They're significantly larger than the protests that we were putting on. So I think that tells you something. But yeah, and this, again, this is all just my opinion, but the brainwashing is real. And you can tell because a lot of these people just aren't living in reality anymore. That's why there's such a divide amongst the people, especially in the United States and in Canada. And and it's not just the left. And Rick, you and I have talked about this before. There's a lot of, in my opinion, ideological subversion or brainwashing from the right as well. And I think it's being done by the same people. And they're just creating complete polar opposites within the local populations, and I don't know if there's any coming back, right? Like the U.S. is on the brink of civil war, in my opinion. It'll be very telling with the election next year and whoever gets put into the office in 2025, and I think that will trickle over to Canada, unfortunately, as well. So. I think there's a lot of damage done, and we have the adults in this country have a lot of work to do to try and bring us back to where we used to be.
Yes, I've been reading some reports from consulting firms that do security and intelligence analysis for the United States, and from reading that material over the past few weeks. And doing other, just observing things, it seems to me like there's a very deliberate effort being made to simply disrupt everything, to shake everything up, just create as much chaos as possible. And while people may sit back and say, that doesn't make sense. Yeah, it doesn't make sense because it doesn't matter if it makes sense. The people doing these things, I think sometimes they don't even create, say, an affront to government or a protest in the streets. But when these, I think, really foreign entities, whatever government it might be that's engaging in this activity, when they see that there's something disruptive happening, they just help it along. They get behind it and help it to create as much disruption from it as possible.
And yes, and that's the power of social media. Like if you just look at Spain, what's happening over in Spain right now, what's happened, in France previously, in the UK today for their version of Remembrance Day, and that social media, everyone's just online. Like you look at everyone is on their phones, they're checking, they're live streaming, they're sharing stuff. And I was with a couple of vets today. We were up in Huntsville, Ontario, at a ceremony up there, and the guy said, and I just met him. He's a good guy, and he had said that social media is probably one of the worst things that ever happened to humanity, because it's just used as a tool to turn the masses on one another. And, like you said, you have foreign entities helping along because they love to see disruption in, enemy countries. And if they can do it without firing a bullet, it's so powerful. And this is what we talk about when we do some of our briefings is, the circles principle, which I learned from Andy Stumpf, ex-Navy SEAL. And he said, you have your three circles: circle of control, circle of influence, and your circle of concern. And everyone, so many people are spending their time in their circle of concern, which is something they have no control or influence over. And that's social media, that's online, that's reading through, a million different Telegram channels every day. And we have to get back. We have to start to try and disconnect and spend less time in the circle of concern and more time in our circle of control and our circle of influence, which is how we conduct ourselves and, how we interact within our community. And that's been in our organization's big push. And, since our inception, we've taken so much flack from the left, from the right, from other vets, from, the government and NGOs writing reports on us, calling us terrorists and stuff like that. And so we're in a very tough position because we have so many members. And you look like the police, a lot of police officers go through their entire career without, firing their service weapon at all, or even pulling it out or anything. But we have guys who are like hardened combat guys who've been in multiple tours, gunfights, and that sort of thing. It would just take one or two of our guys just to come out and say, oh yeah, we're forming a militia or doing something crazy. And then we're all done. Like they would be at my door the next day arresting me. And so we have to just be ultra careful with what we say, what we do. We're a group of peaceful, patriotic veterans. And, we're right now we have like Jeff Evely does sort of one podcast Monday to Friday. But we had some talks over the past couple of days, and we're going to start ratcheting up the content. We're going to have more people doing shows, more people doing, like weekly shows or daily shows or whatever. And we're going to sort of fall back to the inform and educate people the best that we can and give them actually solution-based approaches to our problems, which is sort of what we've been doing, and just encourage our members to get involved in their community as best they can to try to weather the storm that's coming.
That really does kind of give us an indication of what the focus of your organization is about. And maybe you can explain in more detail. You're there to provide support and I guess fellowship for veterans. And then on the other side, you're also there still actively trying to provide a path forward, a roadmap to the future, a future of peace for Canadians in general. Is that fairly accurate?
Yeah. And, we get, we believe that violence isn't the way. And I know a lot of people feel like that's the only way out of this. But if you can wake enough people up and you can get enough people over to your side, and you can, whether it's protesting, whether it's not complying, whether it's, just becoming a massive, powerful unit within your community, then violence isn't required. And, I think it was on Shadow Davis's show a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And, it was all these people in the chat were like, oh, the time for peace is over. And it's like, listen, you and Grandpa's shotgun with your hockey helmet and your fuck Trudeau cape on, like, you ain't doing nothing. You're not accomplishing anything other than you're going to get yourself killed and give the government an excuse to clamp down on us even harder. And, and there's other guys we've talked to, especially like Army guys. I'm a Navy guy. And it's like, you would need to even contemplate, even have a chance of winning against the state using violence. You would need thousands of trained guys, logistical support. Like, it's and it's just not happening. You would never even be able to get to that stage. So that's why, and I know Chris Guy is not everyone's cup of tea, but his messaging, the united sort of non-compliance, is what we think. And not saying that we're right. We don't have all the answers to everything. We can't solve all the problems. We're just trying to give our best sort of guidance. But the sort of do not comply and united non-compliance is the way forward in our opinion. And I hope things don't get violent in our country, but there's a lot of people on edge. There's a lot of people I know out in Alberta where their sort of line in the sand is the gun grab. I was happy to see it push down the road for another little while, but yeah, and that's just my opinion that violence isn't the way, and you're not going to accomplish anything against the state.
What's your view on what we're seeing in the streets right now? The protests, is this an extension, this Palestine Israel conflict, this reaction that we're seeing in Canada, in the United States, in other countries in the West? Is this an extension of the problems we've been facing over the past 3, 4, 5 years?
I believe so, definitely. I don't, this, you had the trucker convoy happened, which was around the world. You had, I remember saying this when I was there. I said, there's probably 1 billion people across the world who know about this, who want to see it be successful. And, then all of a sudden Ukraine, Russia happens, right? And then, so you're distracted with that. And then, you had COVID, you had Ukraine, Russia. Now you have Israel, Palestine. That's ramping up as sort of Ukraine and Russia's sort of ramping down. And it's hard to say because you can't really prove it. But, after Israel, Palestine, then there's going to be another conflict. There's going to be another conflict, another distraction. And they're going to keep on going. And there's no this sort of, we just don't have this time of peace where it's peace and quiet. So I think this is all done. If there's a really good, I think 2 or 3 minute video, and I think we have it listed on our website, but it has the U.S. Special Forces, their PSYOP group, and it's very telling about what they say there, because they're the ones who are, getting people into the streets, getting people angry, getting people riled up using social media and influencers and provocateurs and that sort of thing. And I do believe that. And I don't think there's sort of really anything, we can do about it. Like, people are going to believe what they believe. They're going to follow social media. They're going to, get all angry about, different things and protests. So yes, I think this Palestinian Israel or Jewish conflict, is going to ratchet up, and the more imagery and videos and that sort of thing that come out of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank and the Middle East in general, the more people are going to get angry, and the more that people over here who support that side are going to start to do things, right? I talked about this with Tom Quiggin, who's, an expert on sort of, Muslim, I don't want to say extremism, but Muslims in Canada. And he had said that, it's going to start with sort of some low level stuff, maybe some looting or some vandalizing of, Jewish businesses or synagogues or that sort of thing. And then depending on what happens over there, it can ratchet up even further to where you're going to start to have actual violence, and then potentially people dying. So,
well, we've already seen people dying in these protests. This leader of the Jewish community in Detroit stabbed to death at a synagogue. I don't think it's been definitively proven at this point that it's related to all of these events, but probably a pretty safe bet. The suspect in that released from custody today. Out in California, a man struck with a megaphone, described by witnesses at the scene as, well, they're calling it a murder. We'll see where it goes legally. and just a lot of pushing, shoving, and a whole lot of chaos in the streets. So I think we are getting a fair bit of escalation. You said that you referred to U.S. forces or U.S. I guess intelligence services engaging in sort of a psyop over here. You think that they're the ones engaging in this?
Oh yeah, 100%. Not necessarily in North America, but definitely overseas. That they were involved with the Ukraine-Russia conflict and the overthrow of the government there in 2014.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they have a lot of power, and it's pretty scary, the sort of impact that they have, and psychological warfare. Like you would not believe, and even me and other people, and you probably to an extent, are we're subject to that as well by what's been pounding into our brains in the online sphere. So it is, I've told this to a couple of sort of groups I've went in and spoke at, and some of these YouTube meetings and that sort of thing, is that do not underestimate the lengths that these people are willing to go to implement their global enslavement plan, right? Like they will. You think human life means anything to these people? They don't care. They'll wage wars and kill millions of people to overthrow a dictator and get him sort of out of power and have a bunch of their own people killed and that sort of thing. So it's scary. And if enough people were aware of it and aware what was happening to them and they could resist it, then the less power they would have, right? Because if you look at, like, mainly for the woke left, or the progressives, the extreme left, radical left-wing nutjobs, whatever you want to call them, is they get a free pass from the media and the judicial system. They get let out on bail. David Segarak, perfect example, ran over a bunch of protesters in Winnipeg, not in jail. And then you have the guys like the Coots guys who didn't do anything, and they've been in jail for over 600 days. So they've been brainwashed by academia. They get a free pass from the media and the judicial system. And they're the shock troops of the government, of the left, of academia, of multinational corporations and the bureaucrats and technocrats, everyone who's pushing this. And, if those people could just resist and wake up to what was happening to them and how they're being used, then the whole system would just come crashing down, because people would just push back, and they wouldn't, those groups or those people, like, they wouldn't be able to implement their strategy, because there'd be no one protesting in the street, and none of these counter protesters and that sort of thing. So, but it's easier said than done. There's a lot of weak-minded people out there, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of weak-minded people, I won't use the name. It doesn't really matter. There was a prominent freedom fighter. I was watching a video from this person, and as I watched it, it was very clear that they were very confused. They are very confused. They state right in the video that they don't know what's real anymore. Mm-hmm. They can tell there's something wrong. This person says that they feel they're being manipulated from the left and the right.
Yep.
They don't know what to do anymore. They want to do something, but not sure what it is. And as I'm listening to it, and then I'm, reviewing the material that I've been absorbing over the past few weeks, it is clear to me that we're being bombarded with propaganda, information warfare from many sides. It seems to me and there's intelligence evidence right in front of us that China is involved in trying to influence our government in various ways. They're in academia. There's proof of their activity here in Canada in this regard. No doubt in my mind that they're involved with information warfare. The Russians, I'm sure the Americans as well, trying to insert their influence into Canada. Various governments, and then we see the government of India upset with Trudeau because of his involvement with the Palestinian separatists that are really, in their home country, they're categorized as terrorists. So the Indian government has a real axe to grind with the Canadian government. So all of these countries have incentives to disrupt things here. It's very difficult to know where it's coming from, but I do feel for people everybody really who's being subjected to this. And especially when I was watching that video from this prominent person from the freedom community, very confused, no longer knows what's real because he's like way down this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know how to get back out. You can tell. And well-intentioned, wants to do good things, has no clue what to do because completely messed up in the head.
It's so that's an aspect of information warfare is information saturation. You get so much stuff thrown at you. You can type anything on Google and you can get an extreme side believing one thing, an extreme side saying the other. Different organizations and news outlets and that sort of thing. It is all just information warfare online. And there's a really good S2 Underground documentary on fifth generational warfare. It's nothing new. Like, this is something, and they still do it to this day. And even I engaged in this for my one of my deployments out in the Middle East in 2012, 2013. Is we have documents written in their languages and packages and phone numbers, and we would give them something called MEPs, Maritime Engagement Products, and we go over and board other ships and give it to them, try to get information and try and convince them to call us if they have any intelligence or that sort of thing. But they would drop pamphlets back in the day. They'd put planes over enemy nations or foreign countries. And they would just drop a million sort of leaflets on the ground to try and convince people to do things or change their minds. And this was also done in Vietnam, where they had these recording devices that would play messages to try and get to, I think it was to the Viet Cong there, and they would play these messages to try and scare them that there was ghosts in the jungle or like just crazy stuff. But the thing is now is, if you had a Russian plane or a Chinese plane fly over our country and drop leaflets, like it just wouldn't happen because they couldn't get here, first of all, but second of all, they would be identified and escorted out or whatever. It'd be an international incident. But then now they have the internet. Like, they can access all of every country in the world. They can break it down, whatever demographic they want. Like, we want to target 20-year-old black men. Like, they can do that. All that data online, the harvesting, all the shadow profiles that China has on all of the people in the United States and in Canada, and they can wage that war online, and they can just sit there with trolls and sock puppet accounts, and it's so easy for them to do that. Now, don't fool yourself, like we're doing it to them as well, but it's all online now, and it's 24/7. You're getting bombarded with this propaganda, and what they're doing is, they're creating a bunch of distrust within, the organizations, or encouraging people, to just distrust the government, or, people do generally anyways, but then they're amplifying that. And then, they're telling you that there's, 150,000 Chinese troops in Canada and deep underground military bases, and then people start to believe it. But what happens there is that you get one guy who believes it. And then that guy's like, oh, this is important. I need to share this. I need to tell my friends. I need to tell my family. about what's happening here. And then he convinces a whole bunch of other people, and then they turn around, they do the same thing. And it just, this exponential, like, just growth happens where they turn around, they're sharing all this stuff, which might not necessarily be true. Or there might be a tiny little bit of truth in there. And then the rest of it's complete BS. And you get so many people, and it's amplified, and you get taken down all these different rabbit holes. And then again, you don't know what to believe. You don't trust everyone. You think the government's full of, pedophiles, or you think that, all white men are colonizers and they're bad people. It's on both sides. And I think it's being done again by the same people. And unfortunately, that's where our country's at. And until we can like get back and sort of brush that stuff off and meet in the middle, we're not going to have our country back, unfortunately. And again, it's very powerful. And it's happening 24/7. I could sit there on podcasts, on Telegram all day, every day, all these different channels, listening and just getting bombarded with this stuff and just not know what the truth is. So it's pretty scary.
Back in, I think it was the 1950s, as a media guy, I've worked in media all my life. I was aware that there was research done back in the 1950s, the earliest days of television, where they put electrodes on the backs of subjects' heads, and they watched the sine waves as they were watching television. And what they discovered is that television renders the subject into a very passive state, because you watch television, and it makes you very vulnerable to suggestion. You become very impressionable, and you don't even need to know how to read to absorb the information. And as human beings, we start absorbing that information from the time we're about 18 months old in a really substantial way. You take those facts, that research that goes back that far, and then look at what we have today with the internet. What a powerful tool this is. It's interactive. Make no mistake, folks. This has been researched as well. And the people engaging in information warfare, psyops, governments doing these things, they have very sophisticated techniques, and they're using this technology to its maximum effectiveness. And there are things about this medium that I am sure we still do not fully understand. I think when people say that this is something that is potentially one of the most harmful things that's ever happened to humanity, I think they may well be right.
Yeah, and you look at it, I've dealt with been tracking sort of what's happening on the left, even though, they call me a right-wing nut job or conservative, which I'm not even, but that's what they call me, because they think anyone to the right of Joseph Stalin is right-wing. But I observed that it's like these people, like the woke left, the completely woke, brainwashed left, they hate you. Like, they literally hate you. They literally want your way of life to be gone, and they don't care if you die. Like, that's how extreme some of these people are. Like, that is how brainwashed they are, that they want their fellow Canadians to they would rather them be dead, because it's like Matt Walsh says. He says compliance is the lowest form of human capital. And so all this virtue signaling stuff, like, oh, I'm just so compliant, I'm just going to virtue signal how great I am. All they are is just weak minded people who can't think for themselves. And unfortunately, what they do is they use fear, right? Like, if you disagree with them or you go against them, they'll cancel you, they'll, dox you, and, all these people who do those, what are they called? Where they call the police on them, and they like say, oh, this person's like SWAT you.
Oh,
yeah, it's called swatting.
Swatted, yeah.
Like, it's crazy what these people, like, they don't care. And they literally want they want a revolution. And that's what I think, just going back to the sort of geopolitical and the conflict and everything, is I think a lot of them, like, we're on the brink of revolutions across many different nations in the world, like on the brink, with how many people are in the streets.
Yes. I think you're absolutely right when you say it's probably the same people doing this to both sides, because when you really break it down and it's a very and look at it in a very simple way, both sides want to tear everything apart. Their objective ultimately is the same. Even if you're looking at our politicians who appear to be working against the best interests of the country, what's their objective? To destroy what we have, to destroy the system, because they believe that they're saving the world or whatever it is, from climate change or whatever, objectives they have. They seem to be undermining everything that has been built up in the West. It's become pretty clear to me that even our politicians, people that, us common people, we think that they're the elites, that they're in charge, that they're all in on it. But I think that from what I'm seeing, they're being brainwashed too. They've been subjected to their own, they've been damaged as well. And so they're working in their way. I think it's all a big choreographed exercise in anarchy.
Yeah, I agree with that, because you think about like unelected, bureaucrats and officials and people who are like senior managers or, at, Global Affairs Canada or even like Passport Office, whatever it is they get guidance that trickles down from the top. And now those people at the top, if there's a great term out there called elite capture, they've been captured by, foreign entities or foreign interests and that sort of thing. And they say, okay, this is what we got to do. We got to push this down. So like it comes from PMO, goes down to the different not levels of government, but the different organizations or departments. And then they take that and they push it down. And then all those people believe all that stuff. Like they've done such a great job with the whole critical theory and anti-racism and that whole aspect. Like it has completely infiltrated all of our institutions. And these people are completely convinced of that. They have been completely brainwashed, and it's just a bunch of pseudo nonsense, which like they give these grants to these guys like Ibrahim X Kendi, and he writes a book, and then they take that, and then I'm talking to a vice admiral while I'm still in, and he's quoting Ibrahim X Kendi to me. And I'm like, what do you? I was like, sir, this what this guy's saying completely goes against the military ethos. Like you can't do it. But you look at these briefs, like they use Kimberly Crenshaw as references for military doctrine. So, it's bad, and it's completely infiltrated all of our institutions, all levels of government. And it's unfortunate because those people who've been indoctrinated through that stuff at their work, they take that back and they actually believe it. And then they tell that to their family and their kids and, their circles of influence, and they get more people over. And, it's all just a bunch of nonsense. It's pretty sad.
Yeah. And, this is just my personal opinion from my observations, but I think that foreign governments largely get, they're not getting enough scrutiny. We keep blaming our own government, our own system, we blame ourselves. We're fighting among ourselves. We're all fighting shadows. We don't know what the solution is. We can't figure it out, because even though, say, Justin Trudeau might be the guy who has to go because he's the prime minister, ultimately he's like being manipulated, controlled as well. It's the people manipulating him that we have to figure out how to get out of their clutches, because it's the same people that are manipulating us on the other side, and the people on the other side. Everybody's fighting, and we're all actually, we think we're trying to fight towards some sort of a solution. We're all working to basically destroy everything. We're self-destructing is ultimately what happens. And I think the people choreographing all this are sitting back in the shadows laughing.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, I know it's, if you just look at the World Economic Forum and what they're trying to implement and that sort of thing. And it's interesting because I think it was either a month or a couple months ago, Klaus Schwab came out and he was doing an interview and he said he was surprised at sort of the amount of resistance they faced from, the peasants, the serfs, the people like us, in implementing, Build Back Better and the Agenda 2030 and all that. And so what if you burn it all down and you have a world war, that, and everyone's suffering and everyone, they've either sick or they're starving or they've lost everything and everyone's in sort of distress across the world. To me, that's their contingency plan for Build Back Better, because they're like, okay, well, they resisted it, us trying to implement it passively and getting it in. So now we're going to burn it all down and then we're going to shove it down their throats, and you won't be able to resist because you will be starving. There will be turmoil everywhere. There will be chaos. It will be anarchy, and they'll just come in and be like, look, we'll fix everything. You just have to, buy into our agenda. And that's what I truly believe.
Yeah, and then ultimately, what will we get on the other side of that? I can pretty much guarantee it won't be democratic.
No,
it'll be autocratic, authoritarian.
Yep.
Yeah. So we have to be very careful with this. I keep saying this on the show, and I think people don't misinterpret my intent. But when I keep saying, everybody wants to tear the whole system down, but I still believe that it's the system that is the only thing right now that is saving us, because the system is designed to ultimately self-correct. They can't just. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like we still have democracy. The people here still have some sort of influence over it, over what goes on. If we didn't matter, they wouldn't spend so much time trying to screw with our minds. They need our consent. They need our compliance.
Yeah, and I understand, they're making changes and there's court rulings and stuff like that are taking place that, make, like the entire system is rigged against you. They get away with, fraud and, they can just, do whatever the heck they want. There's no repercussions, the whole, rules for thee, not for me type thing.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, the system does work. So it still does work in my opinion. It needs to be fixed. There needs to be more accountability. But to tear it all down, and you're going to have mayhem. And, but here's the thing, is that there is a chance that could happen. And that's why since last November, our strategic level guidance we put out to our members and our supporters has been localism will defeat globalism, or localism defeats globalism. So if you can get a strong community, of good people working together, helping each other, who knows, like maybe down the road, the police break down. You don't have emergency management in your area anymore. But if you have a strong community, everyone knows each other, then you're going to be able to weather that storm. Now, is that going to happen? I think the probability of that is fairly low. But if you're in the cities, it's going to be mayhem. And that's why some of the things we tell people is like, get out of the city, get your gun license. Those are two things that we tell people that if you can do, try to make that happen. Rural areas, you'll be a lot better off. There's a guy, a really great podcast out there by a guy named Andy Stumpf. I'd mentioned him earlier, the Circles Principle. His podcast called Cleared Hot. And one of the guys he had on there was a guy named, I think, Ben Bishop or Brian Bishop. And this guy was basically an ex-Ranger, so American Special Forces. And he went down to Katrina when emergency management or EMS left. And he said, they were doing CQB or close quarter battles. They were clearing rooms. They were all armed up. And he said it was pure mayhem. All the bad people in the world, in the United States, went to New Orleans and preyed upon these people. And there was murders, there was gunshots, gun battles. It was crazy. what was happening down there. Now, do I think that will happen in Canada like it happened in the United States? No, not to that extreme, but potentially we could see that sort of thing. Like a perfect example was, I think it was, I can't remember, it was early 2000s when we had that power outage in Northeast United States and in Canada, a portion of Canada, on Ontario, and the power was down for however many hours. Yeah, it was down. You had a lot of good stuff happening. Like I remember driving where I grew up in Toronto, and you had, you know, kids and people out there directing traffic. Like there was no police. You had young people out there trying to, you know, help and do their part. But there was a lot of opportunists. They knew that the alarm systems were down. There was looting like you wouldn't believe. There was all sorts of crime happening in these big cities. And, you know, that's just something to be aware of. If the system does break down, you could have anarchy.
Yeah, people say, what's going to happen when the power goes out? Well, I covered that story when, you know, back when it happened. And I can tell you on the Canadian side, things were much better than they were on the US side.
Mm-hmm.
And we did see communities coming together and people helping each other over here. There were incidents of, you know, break-ins and people stealing things and so on. But really, for the most part on the Canadian side, it was encouraging, I think. And I think that what you guys are doing with V4F, encouraging people to come in and build stronger local communities, is one of the key strategies that can insulate us from any kind of anarchy or chaos that might erupt.
Yeah, and that's our big thing. Another thing that we say is like local change will have national impact. So if you can build these strong, independent, resilient communities that have less reliance on the government, and you do that across the country, that will change politics. Politics will be downstream from that, and that is something that you know, will have an impact on our country. So that's what we encourage people to do: get involved. And I put my money where my mouth is. There's a couple other guys and myself in my community. We started a community, like a homesteading group, and that homesteading group is up. It's over 100 people now, and we have potlucks and get-togethers, and people have found friends, and you help each other and that sort of thing, and really sort of we're trying to encourage that or trying to replicate that across the country in these sort of rural communities that are out there, and how you can help each other, because it'd be a little bit harder in the cities because people are a little bit colder in the cities. There's less trust, and everyone's sort of busy doing their thing. But definitely in the rural areas, and it's good that it's if and I know everyone can't do it, but if you can get out of the city. And what we tell people is like, look, focus on food security. But we know they're using food as a weapon. It's like Sun Tzu said, you need to put yourself in an unassailable position. You need to take that weapon out of their hands and put it into your hands. If you can feed yourself, then you're going to be better off. And because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to starve us into submission, or at least that's my belief. And that's how we can counter it, is buying. If you can, so like my property here, so it's at 37.5 acres. When we're fully up and running our farm, we should be able to provide food for like 400 to 500 families in our community. Now you think about that, if you have 4 or 5 of these properties in your area, providing everyone with, local food and chicken and beef and vegetables and everything, and again, replicating that across the country, then we're less reliant on these big multinational corporations, and also the supply chains. Because if we do have a world conflict here, over 90% of the world shipping is done by, transport is done through, shipping, like shipping lanes and cargo ships and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. There's a disruption to that, or embargoes, or they go after Iran, and you have certain products not being able to move through the Straits of Hormuz. That's going to affect the entire supply chain. It's very fragile. So if you can take yourself off of that, then there'll be less of an impact on you, your family, your community, if something does happen.
So the strategy you're employing maybe is a little different than because you're living basically on farmland. But what about somebody who lives in the city in an apartment? What recommendations would you have for someone like that?
Yeah, so recommendation is find some friends or get a location outside of the city just in case something happens, somewhere you can go to. I know a lot of people have that. They either have cottages or, they built a little tiny house on a friend's property, that sort of thing. And really, and it's crazy. I'm looking at it right now, but I never thought that I'd be pressure canning and teaching. I learned how to pressure can a couple months ago. And then, taking that, you can buy stuff on sale at the grocery store, rice, whatever it is. You can pressure can everything. You can store that, and focusing on food preservation. And you should and I'm not saying you go out right off the bat and buy like $50,000 worth of food, and then you're living, in like a little your condo. You have like the tiny little area to live, and all the rest of it's food. But it doesn't hurt just to take some measures, go to Costco, buy some big bags of rice, whatever, just in case, right? And try and slowly, as you can afford it, slowly build up your food reserves and start to learn some of these older skills that our ancestors had in terms of food preservation and that sort of thing. Like the pressure canner is crazy. It's very simple. You do it and you can pressure can beef, food, whatever. You can do microgreens. There's a million different things out there that you can do. And it's just small steps to try and lessen the impact if there is a food shortage. Now, with that being said, I don't know if there's going to be a food shortage in Canada because we are a net exporter of food, but food is going to take up such a large portion of your salary. If you have to feed like a family of 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, that you might not be able to afford food. And I've talked to a lot of people. I'm regularrly emailing people, chatting with people on the phone, meeting people face to face, talking to them and hearing about their troubles and that sort of thing. And there's a lady up in Sudbury where she was like, she feeds her children, sends them off to school, and then she's a single mom. And she just eats cereal, like Minute Oats or whatever she has, because she can't afford to feed herself. So it's pretty sad. And unfortunately, I think it's going to get worse. And you're going to see in the next couple of years when people's mortgages come up for renewal and they can't afford it, and they're going to have to decide whether to eat or pay for their house. And I don't know. It just I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer and thing, but I think that's just the reality of the situation. And,
it is the reality, and that's the price that we're paying for those wars, because the government just prints money, inflates the economy in order to finance these stupid wars, and we end up paying for it with inflation, higher prices, to the point where some people literally cannot afford to eat or support their families. It's insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the skyrocket. So interest rates going up, housing shortage, and then they want to continue with mass immigration here, which is just going to exacerbate the problem, make it worse. Mm-hmm. So that's what we tell people. If you there's a friend of ours, a very popular YouTuber named Curtis Stone. He used to be the urban farmer, and he was in Kelowna, and on his little tiny house in the city with his backyard, the guy was making a ton of food. And then he would like lease his neighbors' backyards and that sort of thing. You can actually do a lot on a very small piece of land, right? There's a guy named 410. He has a great book, which is what we follow, or it's a portion of what we do at this farm here. It's called The Market Gardener. Highly recommend that book. Look it up on Amazon or whatever bookstore. He's got a great YouTube channel called The Market Gardener Institute. That guy in Quebec, and I think his hardiness zone was like 4 Bravo or whatever, and his little 2-acre farm feeds hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of families in his community. So it can be done. You can find those people. There is all sorts of community supported agriculture initiatives happening, and homesteading groups, and you just got to get out and find like-minded people. And that's, and the thing is, if we're wrong, which we could be, we're not saying we're right, but if we're wrong, what have you lost? You're getting healthier food, you're learning new skills, you're teaching your children and your family how to provide for themselves, so if something happens in the future. Like my neighbor, Ben, he's on 100 acres, and I've been where I am for 3 years, and now you go over to his property, he's got cows and pigs, and his chickens and honey, and he's teaching his kids how to clean chickens and this and that. Guy, it's crazy what he's doing on his property and how much food he's producing for other people in the community. So that's at least our approach to things. It's some of the guys I'm not saying discourage people from going out and protesting and that sort of thing, but I ask people when they do that, I say, well, what's your food situation like? Like, are you just solely relying on the grocery store, or have you done something? So if you are going to go do that stuff, maybe just take a portion of your time and focus on learning new skills or doing that, because I've seen people starving to death with my own eyes, right? When I was overseas, I was in the sort of slums of Mumbai in India, and I've seen people who have starved to death. Like, there was a undertaker's cart there, and they had all these feet sticking out the back of it of people who had died. And I can get those people to do anything that I wanted if I just gave them some food. That's how desperate they are. So, you get all sorts of guys and people out there, talking a big game and, tough and that sort of thing. It's like, okay, well, if your children are starving, I bet you won't be singing the same tune that you are now. So that's been our organization's big push, because we think that's what's happening. And someone sent me a email. They're like, oh man, you're a broken record on these podcasts. You just go on and talk about food security. I'm like, well, we think that's like, the center of gravity for the enemy is them attacking our food supply. So if we can eliminate the enemy's center of gravity, then we can win. So that's why we harp on that a lot and really focus on that.
Independence, and your reliance on the government, on that portion of the system. Become as independent as you can, and you'll find freedom in that.
And that's the thing is, like, look what the government, every time the government gets involved with something, they screw it up. Mm-hmm. And what have they been doing recently? Grocery stores. They've been coming out like communist Jagmeet Singh there, coming out and like, oh, that's all the grocery stores and this. They want to get involved with it. They want to have, government influence on, large grocery stores. They're going to screw it up, and it's going to exacerbate it and make it worse for everyone. So
they created the problem to begin with, and now they're blaming it on the grocery stores, and now they want to regulate them.
Oh my, yeah, it's their carbon tax nonsense. And we work with some farmers. There's a really good company out there. They're on Instagram. They're called Wild Meadows Farms or Wild Meadow Farms. Looked them up. That's where our farm buys our beef from. It's a family, local. They're awake. They're very good. I think if you actually use, I think they gave us a discount code. I think if you use V4F, they can give you a discount. They give you a discount code, but they deliver all over Ontario. And those are the people we need to support, right? They're a local farmer. Again, they're awake. They're good people. They have a great Instagram channel. They have great food. We have hundreds of pounds of their grass-fed beef here. And we need to find those gems, those local sort of small businesses in Ontario that employ Ontario people, and everything's done locally. And we need to help them and support them. And so I haven't bought meat from a grocery store since I found them, right? So we buy everything from them. So there's all sorts of local farms. And I'm not saying like there's big farms. Like I know, there's dairy farms, and then they have like massive fields, like, and they do like cash crop, like crappy soy and corn. Like, don't support them. Like, find farmsteads or homesteads or like local farmers who focus on like, food, fruits and vegetables and that sort of thing.
Right.
And try and support them, because they need your support, and you're eliminating the middleman. And then a lot of them, like you can rent like plots of land, or you can come up with deals or garden boxes or whatever. And that's what we need to do. We need to support those people who are feeding our communities and employing people from within our communities.
Maybe we can just shift the focus a little bit for a moment and talk about the support that you're providing for veterans through your organization and where things are at with that, because we've seen, just in the last couple of weeks, the government coming out and talking about, the issue of prayer, and things like that. Can you maybe first of all address that issue, the issue of prayers and how the government's viewing that?
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, so I know we have Harold Ristow, who's one of our unit sort of Padre. He's over in South Africa now, but great guy. He's a major. He got out. He's awake, solid guy. We have a bunch of Padres in V4FA, and I think a handful of them were actually working with Noah Charche from Epoch Times on that article, as well as linking him up with some people on the inside there to talk about that. And I think it was his pushback in his articles which forced them to backtrack. So there's probably three, I'd say, independent journalists that we deal with or on like a semi-regular basis. Noah Charche at Epoch Times is one, Matt Horwood at Epoch Times two, and then there's a really good guy at True North called Cosmin Jurja, who we support. Now we funneled them some information. We got all sorts of stuff sent to us from people within the government, within the military, that we send over to them, and then just to support them and help them get articles out and expose them. So I'm not a religious guy at all, like not one iota. However, like Padres are chaplains, so like the priests, I guess, of the military, there's a place for them, right? They act as like our social workers there. You're having a tough time, you can talk to them. Doesn't matter whether you're religious or not. That's their duty. But what's happening with this, the whole postmodernist Canada and modernity and all the nonsense, they need to eliminate religion, right? Especially Christianity. And I think that I don't know what the percentage of Canadians are religious. I think it's been going down over the years. Like, I'm not religious. None of my immediate friends in my circles are religious. But, if people are religious, all the power to them. I got no problem with them being religious, whatever they want to do. But there was one group that we went and spoke at. We did sort of our briefing, like our community intelligence briefing that we do. And there was a slide on there about Christianity. And one thing is that group we went and spoke with, we know that with the cultural Marxists, they're trying to divide us, race, religions, sexual orientation, gender, skin color, whatever it is, eye color, hair color, doesn't matter. That's what they're trying to do. What I found, though, is that that Christian group that we went and spoke to, they didn't care. There was Chinese guys there. There was Lebanese Christian people. There was Black people, Chinese people. Like, they had a very diverse group. So I think that Christianity is kryptonite to them, because all the identity politics and stuff gets put to the wayside because they have this sort of common love or support or belief in Christ, which again it's not my cup of tea, but all the power to them. So I think that's why they're going after that, and this whole like, oh, we need to be more inclusive and that sort of thing. Like, no one cares, man. I was at, and if you do care, like, suck it up. Like, get over yourself. Like, I'm so tired of the pussification of our society and a bunch of people who just walk around looking to get offended by everything. That's all they do, because that's what they've been brainwashed to be. They're just perpetual victims. It's like, we're not victims. I don't care. I'm not a religious guy. At the ceremony today in Huntsville, they said the Lord's Prayer, and they were saying all this in references to God. I don't care. Doesn't bother me whatsoever. If that's what's really going to hurt you is words, then, and that's unfortunately the way it is. And so we're in bigger trouble than what we think they are, because everyone just gets offended by everything. So that's my take on it. They have backtracked it, but it's not going away. In a year or two, they're going to come down with another directive, and they're going to do it. And they're the chaplaincy branch in the military is in a crisis right now because they don't know what to do. And eventually what I think they're going to do is they're going to eliminate that trade or that occupation. And then all those people are going to get kicked out. But the chaplains have been leaving in droves because of the stuff that the government's been forcing on the military. So it's unfortunate, but this, even when I was in, they came out with that nonsense, when I was doing like in enrollment ceremonies to get people into the Canadian Armed Forces, is like, you can't say ladies and gentlemen anymore. You have to say everybody because it's not inclusive enough. And I was like, get stuffed. I'm not saying, I'll say whatever the heck I want. I'm not going to do that. And they're like, well, you have to say, when at the beginning of the ceremony, you have to say, we're on the unceded territory of the Ojibwe, Algonquin. I don't know if you can swear on your podcast, but get the hell out of here. Get fucked. Like, all that stuff is all just a bunch of nonsense. It's this woke, progressive BS. And I'm not partaking in that sort of thing. And I will live my life not participating in that. And Dave Chappelle summed it up perfectly on one of his comedy specials. He's like, I don't want to live in this world you're proposing. And that's the way it is. I'm not going to participate in that. I'm not going to perpetuate that. And I'm not going to bend the knee to these woke idiots. So it's just too bad. And the more people we can get involved and not use pronouns in their bios and all this other nonsense, the better off we will be. And these people will just be victims forever. And if that's how they want to live their lives, then it's their choice.
So much of that is really designed to just make make Canadians feel ashamed of being Canadian.
Yeah, 100%. Well, the other thing, and this, I had this discussion with someone, is, there used to be a sense of patriotism within our country, especially in the 90s and 2000s there. And then, when Occupy Wall Street happened, then that's when all the race baiters and all that sort of, BLM stuff and all that stuff came around. It was like, okay, let's introduce them to identity politics so they can stop focusing on us. And, you see people like, because of the trucker convoy, I'm ashamed to fly the Canadian flag, and it's so bad, and it happens down in the United States and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, that's done on purpose. They literally want you to fly like the people who have the alphabet people flag, which keeps getting changed every 3 months as they add a new victim group to it, right? Eventually it's going to be, 75 different colors and things and that. It's like those people who've been brainwashed to believe that stuff and have it in all their social media bios and that stuff. Those people have more of a connection with people in different countries who fly that same flag. So they want to eliminate any sort of patriotism, they've taken nationalism and tried to paint it as like some dirty word, like, nationalism is racism or patriotism is racism. That's a bunch of nonsense. But that's all part of what their global enslavement plan is, because they want open borders, they want the free movement of goods, free movement of workers, and they're basically packaging it to you and sending it to you like, oh, look, you can travel the world freely and do this and all that. It's like, the reason they're going after flags and after patriotism is so that they can have an easier time implementing their plan. And they want to unite people under that alphabet people flag. You see it all across the world. So eventually that's flying with the Canadian flag at embassies. It's flying in the United States at foreign military bases. Eventually that flag is going to be at every Western country's. It's going to be flying rips, and eventually they're just going to get rid of the national flags, and it's going to be that alphabet people's flag, which is really just a communist flag, just changed just a bunch of different colors on it. But that, in my opinion, that's what they're doing, and that's why they're going after patriots. So patriotism is a bad word. People are disgusted with the Canada flag. Like, give me a break. And
I've made exactly the same observation about the flag.
Yeah. We have one flag. We shouldn't have the Ukrainian flag. We shouldn't have the Israel or Palestine flag. We shouldn't have any of this. You have the Canadian flag, and that's it. We're all united. We have a common language, or two common languages. We have a common currency. We have a common sort of belief system and goals, and we should be looking out for Canadians and Canadian interests, both at home and abroad. And that's it. So none of the stuff with this like all these other flags, but this is again them chipping away at patriotism and nationalism, and they're doing a good job.
Yeah, it's no accident that that flag was flying outside the Prime Minister's office. Take the Canadian flags out and put the other flag in there. It's flying. You saw it right at the entrance to the building where the Prime Minister's office is.
And then people get upset over it, and then what do? They turn around and call you racist or
homophobic or whatever,
homophobic or transphobic. I don't know. Last I understood, phobia was a term used for fear. I'm not afraid of these people. And they call that us all the time. Oh, you're this or that. It's like, well, my uncle, I grew up with, I was exposed to, homosexuality at a young age because my uncle was gay. And I grew up in the hood in Scarborough. So like you look at my group of friends, they're like Chinese and black. So like none of that stuff. I just laugh at those insults.
See, for me, it isn't about that issue. It's about not respecting the Canadian flag. It's about capturing the Canadian flag, getting rid of the Canadian flag and replacing it with something that's not appropriate. You don't take the Canadian flag down and replace it with that. And that is exactly what happened in that particular instance. And you're seeing it, similar things going on all over the place.
Yeah. And during the trucker convoy, there was a vet, like a 6-year boomer vet named Randy Warden, who did an article with CBC. And he was like, oh, as a veteran of this country, I'm like so sad that the truckers are using this Canada flag for racism. This is not what I fought for, and this and all. And that's all they did. CBC. They never came and talked to me. I was there. Never talked to Daryl Smith. Never talked to Saxon Murray. Never talked to Alice Cabana. Never talked to Chris Deering. Never talked to any of our guys who were there supporting the truckers, because we were going to tell them how we felt as veterans. Okay. Not this guy who's like a 6-year reservist with like no medals on his chest. Look at Daryl Smith. He's one of our guys there. He's special forces guy. His rack's huge. He got like 8 medals. He got mentioned in dispatches. He got commendations. Why don't you go talk to that guy and see what his opinion is? But they won't. They'll never talk to guys like that. They tar and feathered James Topp. All these guys and it's just they go and talk to this like big fat reservist cook named Clayton Goodwin, who did like 11 years and never stepped a foot outside of our country. Those are the vets they go and talk to. Those guys aren't, well, they are vets, but they're not, they're just a different class of veteran than some of the guys that we have. So again, that's who they do it. And it's all about narrative. It's all about pushing their narrative. They control the language. They control the conversation. They control the outcome, unfortunately.
Yeah. Where are things at with the lawsuit? That or maybe there's more than one. I'm having trouble following all of the legal things that are going on, but there was a lawsuit involving veterans and the mandates and vaccines. Where do things stand with that?
Yeah,
you guys are involved.
Yeah, so we have a lot of our members involved. We've raised some money for them. If you like our new shirts, black and white, we got shirts, hoodies, and long sleeve T-shirts. You can go to v4f.ca and hit shop. All the profits from the sale of these shirts, hoodies, and long sleeves go to their lawsuit. And so we're hoping to raise, I think it's $3,000 or $4,000 to help them with their lawsuits there. So the class action lawsuit, or I believe it's a mass tort, I'm not 100% sure. That was filed back in June. They had a second one where they opened it up, and I don't know how many more clients they got, or Catherine and Valor Law got from that. But I know some of our guys added their names and they got involved in that second lawsuit. Now there's a third lawsuit coming for vaccine injured members of the CAF, and I don't know if that one's still open. But there's a lot of soldiers who've been vaccine injured. They might not be covered by Veterans Affairs Canada because they're just trying to save money. So that can become another major lawsuit. So it's going to take years. We're trying to support them the best way we can. So, one of the things we do is that if we find out that someone's got 5 after, that's like not suitable for further service. They were kicked out over this the job. We try and send them like a membership package with some t-shirts, a letter, a mug, hat, that sort of thing in there. Just let them know that they're not alone. Try and support them whichever way we can, sort of bring them into our networks and that sort of thing. So you have that, and then again, like we do fairly well on merchandise sales, but a lot of that money comes in and it goes out, right? Like we've helped homeless vets, we've helped other organizations, we've helped people with lawsuits. I think we raised over $10,000 for James Topp and his march across the country. So we're fairly good at fundraising. I think we're just doing our taxes and everything now, and we're at over $150,000 that we've raised. Not all through merchandise sales, but we've set up some major give, send, goes. We set up the Detective Constable Helen Gruce, her give, send, go, which I think is just approaching $50,000. So we're pretty good at fundraising. And our support fund that we have, the monthly support fund, we're trying to encourage 10,000 Canadians to give us $5 a month. It's not there yet. A lot of us, like myself, are on farmsteads or farms or that sort of thing, and now is busy time as you sort of prep for winter, cut firewood, put things away, change animal bedding and that sort of thing. So I'm really busy with that. But starting in December, when we sort of hunker down for the winter, we're going to start promoting that a bit more. It's a completely separate bank account. We post the bank statements online, and basically we have some people donate 100 or 20 or $10, whatever it is, and then basically you get sort of 3 initiatives that you can sort of cast a ballot for, and then whichever person receives the most votes, they get the money sent to them. We don't skim off the top, like nothing like that. Like every cent that comes in goes out. And so we're going to really ramp that up in terms of sort of promoting that to get people to sign up. And I think our first one we helped, first month we did it, which I think was June. We helped the family of Sheila and Nett Lewis. Second month we did Garnett Harper, who was the young 35-year-old man who got denied a kidney transplant and passed away. So we helped his wife and kids. The past one, we sort of did a joint month, August, September. That was the Coots 4. So we sent out raised almost $3,000 for the Coots 4. So we sent that out to Betty Carbert, which is Chris Carbert's mom, to be divided amongst the 4 gentlemen. And then this month, I can't remember what it was. I think it was Kimberly Newdorf was a stay-at-home mom who got like a $37,000 fine for going against the COVID mandates. And then there's Sarah from Canadian Frontline Nurses, and I think it's Dan Hartman, I believe, for this month. So the voting's, I think, closed. I should probably check that and see who it is. So anyways, it's like the tyranny is not going away. We need to continue to raise funds and support people. But imagine if we had this very large amount of money that the people the donors could use to, help protect Canadians, and who knows, right? Like you might eventually need that in the future, and it's completely transparent. Like I said, we don't even publish our bank statements. We actually get the bank to send us the transaction list, and we have right from them every transaction down there. We're a couple months behind, so just forgive us. We got to play a bit of catch up, but over Christmas and over next year, we're really, really going to promote that. And because this tyranny is not going away, and we need to be able to support people the best we can. And not to take anything away from Democracy Fund and JCCF, because I know they've done sort of good work, but not everything requires lawyers. Some things, fines or for family, and how we're helping veterans, because we're not a charity. So we tell people, if you want to donate to a good veterans charity, there's Veterans Transition Network. They're pretty good. But also, when you cast your ballot, you have the option to take 10% of the money raised and give it to a veterans organization. So we did Veterans and Everyday Heroes. We did Operation Pegasus Foundation. We did the Valor Law Action Center, which is the calf mandate lawsuit. And I think this month there's a good guy named Mark Mankey who does a very good podcast, talks about PTSD and traumatic brain injuries and that sort of thing. So just give him Sony. So we'll continue to change that up. We just take 10% and send it off to good, reputable veteran companies who we know are helping vets.
Well, I'm glad you outlined those things, because I know that when it comes to anything that anybody does, whenever, no good deed goes unpunished, right? Doesn't matter who's trying to do good things. There's always somebody out there criticizing. And, you guys have a stellar track record, really, of stepping up and getting things done. You're effective, you're organized, you're able to identify specific areas of need and get help to those folks. And you're also, it's a democratized process, because you're allowing people to be involved in deciding where the funds are directed.
Yeah, so it's like we just call it, like, it's a form of monetary populism. So like I said, we sort of tested out the past 5 months. It works. We're going to start to market it properly, do promotional videos, who the people are for this month, what they need, show their pictures. We're going to have, me sort of talking about the different initiatives. But that, and then we're actually going to, like, right now we just do the one podcast. We're going to start coming out with more content, different shows, different sort of vets coming in, speaking about different topics and that sort of thing. I'm probably going to do like a weekly half-hour show. And just, again, we're trying to hunker down and focus on that, informing and educating people about what's happening in the world from a, patriotic group of vets who are just concerned about the direction the country's going, right? So we're going to continue to try and work hard. We do have to get our house in order in terms of, membership. I think the membership just reopened probably about 2 hours ago. I think I have to check. So we just got that fixed up, and a lot of that, and we had it closed for I think like 6 or 7 months, but a lot of that has to do with like personal security, in terms of, we don't want people's information to be shared. So there's all sorts of encryption and stuff. We had to get like these specialist guys in to take care of that stuff. So it's coming. We're a bit of a plateau in terms of sort of internally with like engagement with our members. We're going to rectify that soon, and we're going to get busy. We're going to open it up, and we're going to continue to push out our message and that sort of thing, and hopefully it's going to have an effect, right? Like, that's, like I said, we don't have the answers to everything, but another thing is, like, we get inundated with like people sending us stuff, emails. Like, I get phone calls, texts, like every fifth email, some like person like, oh, you gotta watch this like 6-hour video and it's going to tell you what's wrong with the world. And we get all sorts of guys. There's like, there is a ton of mental illness out there. Okay. And we deal with that a lot. We get people sending us stuff, common law, this, intergalactic federation, that, and these different rabbit holes and stuff. Yep. And then, we've had guys spend like countless hours talking to people like, listen, I got a story here. If you can get it out there, it's going to bring down the Trudeau. Like, just, it's like constant. We get this stuff sent to us. And then when you take the time and listen to it, because we're all volunteers, none of us are getting paid. Everyone's got friends and family and that sort of thing. Then you say, oh yeah, there's nothing there. Then they turn around. They're like, oh, they're controlled opposition because they're not taking my nut job story and doing, a 2-hour podcast on it. And then they go around and this shit on us. Like, it's like, so we just don't see it. We just don't see some of the things that get sent to us. And, like, it's constant, this stuff. And it's like, one of your guests there, your boy Matt there, that guy does videos on me, and they're hilarious. We just watch them for pure comedic purposes, right? And he's like, oh, look at the logo. See the wings and the logo? Those are United Nation wings. So they're getting paid for by the United Nations, and they're this and that. It's like, oh my gosh, people are so down the rabbit hole. It's sad. And but anyways, like, not complaining. Like we get attacked all the time. We get attacked from the left and the right. So, but like I tell people, it's like a bunch of our guys are taking incoming enemy gunfire. Your little online insults aren't going to have any effect on them.
Yeah, well, it's pretty clear to me that the material you're talking about is a big part of the PSYOP. And I've been looking at that stuff, and I've really kind of, again, as a media guy, I'm viewing it and seeing now. I've really broken down the techniques that they use to disarm people mentally, so they can implant these ideas into people's minds. And yeah, you know, Matt, he's definitely into the whole, you know, Freemasons and the conspiracies, that's for sure. And I'm sad to see that he has attacked you, and I'll be having a conversation with him about that.
No, it's fine though, because it's like I actually listened to the whole video where he was talking about me, and he's like, "Oh, he's on OpenGov," and I was like, it was comedy. Like I was laughing. Like it's.
Well, I can tell you that before I ever met him, before I ever spoke to him, he attacked me online, and I don't even remember exactly how we did get connected, but I had a conversation with him, and the next thing you know, he's apologizing. So, you know, maybe we can reconcile things and bring him out of that rabbit hole long enough to get onto a more positive footing with you guys.
Oh yeah, no, there's no hard feelings like from me. It's just funny. It's like I just laugh at that stuff because I know exactly who I am. I can show you my bank accounts. I'm not getting paid by anyone. In fact, V4F owes me a bunch of money because I'm the one who pays all the monthly bills off off my credit cards. So.
Well, I don't think you've been to Davos, and I don't think you hang out with Klaus. So, you know, I think you're okay.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, and if you guys check out our shop, so it's shop.veteransforfreedom.ca. We got James Top prints there that we have for sale. We have the limited edition again. This all just fundraising initiatives that we have. But there was a young author, and her name, she wrote a book. I think she was a PPC candidate. And I'm just going to get her name right here. Where is she? So she has a book called Fistman's Fraud. And her name is Regina. Sorry, I'm just trying to find her name here. But anyways, it was gonna launch on Amazon. And I guess because of the nature of the book that she wrote about, it was Amazon gave her the runaround, and so anyway, I guess she knows some of our members. However, yeah, so it's called. Her name is Regina Wattel. She's a PhD in statistics, and it's a collection of letters and correspondence. So basically, she had it all going, and then when it went to launch on Amazon, she had all these pre-sales and that sort of thing. All of a sudden, Amazon said they're not selling the book. So, anyways, she reached out to us, and we put it up on our store, and I think we sold a lot of copies. I think already. It just started, I think, a day or two ago. But yeah, and it has to do, I think, with hate. And you know, and she's a statistician. I assume it's going to be interesting. It's not going to put you to sleep, but it's going to talk about the COVID-19, talk about, you know, Canadian institutions and that sort of thing. But yeah, we're trying to help this author there. And so if you check that out, I think it's like free shipping. I think it's $29.95. And yeah, so we're sort of an interim distributor for her for this book called Fistman's Fraud. And it's done pretty well on sale. So we're just trying to support her to get her book out and get the word out. And I haven't ordered my copy yet, but I'll take a read through it and see how the book is. But yeah, just interesting that because of the topic of it, all of a sudden when it went to launch a couple days ago, Amazon just said, nope, sorry, we're not selling it. And so we retweeted some stuff on Twitter with her, like the author's on there. So if you want to support, if it's a topic and you like reading books and it's a topic that you're interested in, we're trying to support this lady and the sale of her book.
And speaking of support, like I'm wearing a poppy, and I know that for a lot of people, the Legion, the Royal Canadian Legion, no longer, they don't hold it in very high regard because a lot of people feel like they don't really represent veterans anymore. Where is V4F with all of that? Because I know with even James Topp, as he was crossing the country on foot, they denied him access to Legion facilities for meetings and things of that nature.
Yeah. So look, the Legion is, I talked to a buddy of mine who's involved with them. And he's like, look, it's like, if I took over my local Legion branch, it's like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. So it doesn't really matter. The Legion is, look, not all Legion branches are bad. Some of them have a lot of vets they're involved and that sort of thing. But a lot of them are either shutting down or they don't have the support, the membership that they need to keep it going. One of our guys said it best. One of our guys out in Quebec there, he said, look, like the new sort of Legion, or the new sort of thing for veterans is bonfires and bike leather. There's all sorts of VMCs, which is veteran motorcycle clubs across the country. They get out and they do that sort of thing. Not a lot of them are going to Legions. Now, the way the Legion, and I was never a member of the Legion. I don't drink. Right, I stopped drinking about 4 years ago, but it's just like you go to a dive bar and you tell war stories and that sort of thing. It's like, it's not appealing to me. I'd rather sit around a bonfire with a bunch of friends and just shoot the shit. So the Legion, unfortunately, hasn't evolved with the times, and definitely they expose themselves with how they treated James Topp, right? And it wasn't necessarily local Legions. Some of them were like, yeah, we'll have you at an event at our Legion. But then who got involved was their national command called Dominion Command, which is a bunch of civvies. Were getting direction from the government or whoever to say, look, this guy is a racist, a bigot, a white supremacist. You can't have him there. And if you do host James Topp, we're going to take away your Legion license. So obviously those guys couldn't do that. But then they turn around and host drag shows for children at the Legions, and that was like the final straw. So a lot of veterans, my generation, a lot of Afghan veterans, they just have no use for the Legion. There's no connection there, and so it's unfortunate they haven't evolved. But they were, and there's a really good, on Twitter. There's I think we have it's either monthly or quarterly. We do a veterans coffee. It's a Twitter space. If you go onto our Twitter, you can go and listen to the previous one that we just did a couple of days ago, the Remembrance Day special one. But I was on there, Tom Raz on there, Alex Cabana was there. It's hosted by a guy named I think Mike, who is called Freedom Honey. But they got this really good guy on there, and I think he has a big Twitter following. I can't remember, like 12 or 13,000 people. His name, it's Boerbel, Boerbel, I think it is. His name's Chuck. He's like a pretty well-known and respected war hero, and good dude. We retweet a lot of the stuff that he says, and he's just a really down-to-earth guy. But he summed it up in that Twitter space. He said, look, he goes, the one organization in this country who should have resisted against the mandates and the papers and all that stuff should have been the Legion, and they didn't. So he summed it up pretty well in that Twitter space there. And that's how I feel. Like I don't I didn't think too much about the mandates because I wasn't really aware what was happening with the Legion, because I've never had any sort of inclination to go and visit my local Legion. Mm-hmm. But definitely the way they treated James Topp, especially them turning away a decorated 5-tour combat veteran who I know I spent a lot of time working with his march cross country. He's a very humble, he's a very good man, honest, guy. He's a good person. And they turn away a guy like that. And then they turn around and say, yeah, here's drag shows for kids. So that was the final straw for me. So with that being said, we've been promoting something called the AMF, or the Afghan Memorial Flower. Mm-hmm. And basically, it wasn't created by us. We were creating something similar, like it was called the Infinite Resolve pin. There was like a pin or a patch. Again, it's up on our store. But these guys, right at the same time, because they were feeling the same way, created this Afghan Memorial Flower. And so if you go to blackbirdindustries.ca and you go under accessories, we link it fairly often when we're promoting the AMF. And they had a really good write-up. And they said, look, and I know where it came from, because I was sort of upset at this, is, in the last municipal election, there was 2 veterans who were running municipally. And what they did on their campaign signs is they had a poppy on there just to indicate that they were veterans. And then they got threatened by the Legion. They said, you can't have that on your signs. We own the rights to this, blah, blah, blah. And they lost the plot. And so the guys at, I'm just going to say BBI, Blackbird Industries, guys at BBI came up with the design. They did this really good write-up on Instagram. And it really, hit home with us, and we agreed with what they were doing. So we started to promote that, and we give them recognition all the time because they're the guys who invented it. But it's just something that where they're not going to. It basically is in their post, like any veteran can use it. Yeah, if you go under accessories there, but any veteran can use it for whatever reason. He's not going to hold it to them and say, no, you can't use it or whatever. So it's a really good initiative, and that's what we're sort of going with. Now, if people want to wear poppies, that's no problem whatsoever. This is just an alternative to the poppy. And you can use it for whatever. It's an indicate you're a vet. There's no copyright issues. And these guys they're great. They have great flags. They're solid dudes over there. And they have the lapel pin. And so we're running with that for our organization. And it's just an alternative to the poppy. And again, any veteran can use it. And it has more of a connection with the Afghan veterans than the poppy does, in my opinion. But they do custom stuff. Yeah, they're good guys, and I think they're out in Victoria, in British Columbia. So highly recommend. And now what we're doing is we're doing joint orders with them. We're ordering the lapel pins. We're ordering the patches. Like, we have patches in our store, but we're doing joint orders with them, and we'll continue to promote it. And every order that you do with us, what we've done is we put in a sticker, so an AMF sticker that we have on our website. But then what we've done is we've taken their write-up that they wrote about why they created the flower, and we put that in the order as well, so people can understand it. We link to their website and that sort of thing.
And what's the website for you guys? Is V4F or V?
Yeah, if you go v4f.ca, then you just hit shop, and a new window should open up.
Okay, so let me just show folks what that looks like here. So there's your home page for your main site.
Yeah, and then hit shop.
Just click shop.
Yeah, I think you'll have to change the share screen there to I think it's a new window.
And you've got a vicious dog in the background there.
Oh yeah, hey Rustin, come here. Yeah, his name's Rustin Cole. If anyone knows where that name comes from, True Detective season 1. Yeah, so there's Fistman's Fraud. Yep, and then there's we got our Do Not Comply T-shirt. Yeah, we got some good stuff on there, and they made some changes to the prices, so we should be able to offer free shipping, I believe. There's the AMF, the sticker, and our patch, and we have some extra. All the Canada Marches gear is with us, So if you want some cheap T-shirts and long sleeve shirts, different colors, we have it all. All that money goes to James, or if James doesn't want it, he directs us where to send the money for those sales. So we have the Coots bumper stickers there. Yeah, we don't have too much stuff, but we try to get some quality stuff, quality hoodies, quality. If you hit catalog, Rick, up on the middle there, it'll show you pretty much show you everything. So we got these multicam whoobies, mugs, and stickers, challenge coins, and all that stuff. But our big one we're sort of pushing there is the do not comply decal and the T-shirt, because if all of us don't comply against the nonsense, they will have no power. And again, that's something we've taken from Chris Sky. Where sort of the united non-compliance is like, do not comply with their nonsense. So now I don't know if Rick, if you want to show this, but if you look in the back room chat there, I did put up the video there for the PSYOP group, and it's short. I think it's only like 2 minutes or 3 minutes. But if you want to play that, it's a very, very powerful video, and you can sort of see what our governments are capable of in terms of, the military and the propaganda and psychological operations.
Let's take a look. Here we go.
As the world watches and listens in horror, the peaceful pro-democracy demonstration in China comes to a violent and bloody end. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Wolves hiding nearby, whispering do or die around me. You say your last good night while I get
There is another very important phase of warfare. It has as its target not the body, but the mind of the enemy.
The target of psychological warfare is against the enemy's mind.
It is words and ideas.
Ammunition used by PSYWAR.
Its mission is to influence the thoughts of the enemy soldier, and at the same time
Is expected and encouraged to study foreign languages and the social sciences such as history, economics, and sociology. He must have a broad and sympathetic understanding of all phases of human experience.
gripping at my skin, the walls of night close in.
but the use of this force as an integral part of combat has now taken on new form.
As I wait to say my last goodbye.
These are the Psy War soldiers.
So that's a recruiting video for psychological warfare operators in the United States. And they're getting to you with this item here, your phone. You're on it constantly, and they're hitting you all the apps, everything, videos, content, and they're just pounding it into your in your head. And that's the it's a huge tool that they use to deliver their message, and it's crazy. So that's like a very powerful video. I must have watched that. I've played that video probably 50, 60 times, and all the briefs and everything we've done, and they share people like that's the sort of capability they have, and the whole world's a stage for them. And they are, like they said, they're everywhere because of the internet and phones and computers and laptops. Everyone's connected. So just something to be aware of.
Absolutely. And I think we need to be aware that every government is engaging in this kind of activity. Every government. Yep. I think it's important that people understand that it's not. I think people get focused on that stuff and they automatically think that it's our own government trying to screw us. And in some cases that may be true, but we also have to understand that it's these other outside entities that are also trying to affect change here as well. And we have to remember that we are right now at war. We are at war with China, with Russia. And I don't blame them at all for doing what they do, but they are absolutely involved in this kind of activity as well. And I think the Russian the Russian forces are very good at this as well. They're not slouches when it comes to this kind of activity. So
yeah, and that's the thing. And you know, Trudeau, as much as I hate the guy and I think he's a traitor to the nation, but when he comes out and says, you know, certain things are Russian disinformation, he's actually, not everything, but in some fronts, he's not wrong, right?
And
you know, there is a lot of
Chinese
influence.
And he has he what was his phrase? He has a certain admiration for the basic Chinese dictatorship.
Dictatorship, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and we're seeing that the Chinese also have direct influence over academia and right within our government. We know that a lot of these politicians are compromised. So it's just very clear to me that we're getting it from all sides.
Yeah, and like I said, don't fool yourself. We're doing the same to other countries, right? So
absolutely.
And even in forms of like lobbyists, right? So these lobbyists get paid millions of dollars to go to other countries to spread influence and sell American products or Canadian this or that. There's all sorts of economic warfare happening. There's stuff that's just, you know, your average, you know, Joe Blow Canadian citizen like myself or you or like a plumber or a teacher. Like we're not even aware of the stuff that's happening.
Yes.
That's those levels. They are a constant war. And now that, again, you have the internet and you have the ability to influence entire nations with apps, like look at TikTok and like, oh, we're not harvesting American, you know, citizens' data. Oh, wait, we are. Like it's unbelievable how much access they have to us through our phones and through our online footprint.
You know, with regard to that, I've been also researching the techniques used by the Nazis in World War II. And people, when you hear the phrase, you know, they ruled with fear, or if you think of a dictator ruling through fear, what Hitler actually did, and in his own words, he made it clear that, yeah, you control people with fear, but the idea was not to make people fearful necessarily of him, but to make people fearful of external forces, fearful of an enemy that he would identify, and specifically the Jews. So he made people afraid of them so that they would take action against them and use them as a scapegoat at the time. That was his technique. So it's a more sophisticated thing than just coming at things straight on. That's why a lot of things don't seem to make sense to people when you're talking about psychological warfare.
Oh yeah, and it's the same technique they use for unvaccinated Canadians, right?
Exactly.
Exact same technique. Turn around and make these people like, oh, they're sick and diseased, and stay away from them and don't invite them to your family gatherings and that sort of thing. It's just the same technique. And I talk about this a lot when I talk to people and we brief and everything. We talk about the trucker convoy and we talk to on our command net there with guys, and a lot of our guys, myself included, were fully preparing to be put in camps.
Yep.
Right. Like we literally, and guys believe it. And that's what I believed. And if it wasn't for the trucker convoy, we'd probably still be in camps. Right. So, I talk about it a lot is that was a huge victory. Don't ever think that it was a loss. I did a pretty good speech there. I was like, if we stay, we're going to force a tyrant to expose them. And look how many people that woke up, the freezing of bank accounts, the beatings of innocent people. It was short-term pain for long-term gain. And it woke a lot of people up. So huge victory. We're not in camps. And, it was a very, probably the most patriotic thing I've ever been a part of. And even though, we get I like to call the Bolsheviks. So there's a group of veterans on Twitter who just attack us all the time. And it's funny, they complain, they're like, oh, V4F blocked us. It's like, well, we blocked you because you're running your mouth online anonymously. We've encouraged you to come and speak to any of us, whether it's in person or on our social media. And you haven't, you're too afraid. So once you, grow a sack and you want to come and speak to any of us online, then we'll unblock you. But none of them do. But they attack us. They're like, yeah, you guys were trying to overthrow the government and this. And it's like, it's pretty laughable because I tell people, it's like, if we wanted to overthrow the government, we would have brought guns. And we didn't bring any guns because we knew it was a peaceful protest pushing back against the government. So it was pretty interesting to see that. And then they take some MOU that I wasn't even aware of until like months after the convoy. And I would say that, most people who were attending weren't aware of that MOU either. So it's like just trying to paint everyone with that same brush. But there's so many weak people out there, anonymous people, and they call us cowards, stuff like this. Like, well, I go on podcasts, I use my real name. I'm on the V4F website. All of our guys and gals are on there. Like, we're not afraid. There's just so many anonymous people online just running their mouths. It's a pretty sad state of affairs, and but it's just the reality. That's what we're living in nowadays, and there's just so many brainwashed people, and it's again all through manipulation.
It absolutely is. It's very clear that there are forces out there that are trying to weaponize mental illness. And we're seeing definite evidence of that. And we can, dig into that another night in far more detail. But Drew, I'll get you to maybe sum things up for us here with some final thoughts on, are we winning? I mean, you mentioned the convoy. That was a huge victory. I think it woke up millions of people all around the world. Are we still on a path to winning?
It's hard to say, again, because, my brain can't even comprehend the lengths that these people are willing to go to. You have to understand there's trillions of dollars at stake. There's dynasties, there's large organizations with hundreds of thousands of workers who sort of want to see this thing through. So I don't want to give people hope or, be too negative. I'll just say that we're still deep. The battle, the war still rages on. Don't let your guard down. And what I tell people is, again, localism defeats globalism. So try and get involved locally the best you can, meet other like-minded people, and really prepare yourself for a tough, I think, couple of years. Hopefully it's not decades, but the kinetic portion is starting, in my opinion, and all the sort of lead up and everything, and the preparations in place. And you have massive amount of firepower sitting off the coast of Israel and in Lebanon right now. Already some of the ships are moving down to the Red Sea. So just be aware and try and prepare the best you can for dark times. And again, I hope I'm wrong with everything I'm saying, but if I am, then what have you lost other than sort of gaining new skills and friends and that sort of thing? So you can be cautiously optimistic, but prepare for the worst and hope for the best is what I would say.
Andrew, thank you so much for joining us on the program tonight. Extremely helpful.
Great. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, folks, take a brief break, and I'll come back in a moment and tell you what's up next, because we've got something cooking on the other side of this.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that will do it for this portion of Maverick News for tonight. But in a half an hour, I will be back on these Maverick News Network channels with Lori Spencer and Tyler McConnell for Strange Bedfellows. That's at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, just over half an hour from now. And we will be, I think, dipping into a discussion on Israel-Palestine tonight. We were supposed to have a special program at 1 p.m. this afternoon with a couple of knowledgeable people in that area, but one of the key guests was not able to attend, canceled at the last minute, so that didn't happen today. There were going to be 5 of us on that panel to discuss and debate what's going on over there between Israel and Palestine. But we'll get into it in a half an hour. So it didn't happen at 1, but we have a slightly different version ready to go for 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So with that, I will sign off, get everything cranked up, and I'll see you guys in 33 minutes right back here for Strange Bedfellows on the Maverick News Network. On the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.